This is Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for clicking on today's video and taking some time out of your day to rock and roll with us. Coming up, Eagles fans have a lot of questions about this pivotal offseason, and I was racking my brain. This is one of the most excited that I've been for an Eagles offseason in a really long time. Still a really good roster, and if they get some things right this offseason, Philadelphia Eagles can compete and can compete big in 2024. So let's start to take your questions here, and let's open the floor. Jay Sid, $5 super chat. Can you keep a staff that can adjust, that's not creative? Nick Sirianni has to go. I like that G.J. Kinney call. Now, if Nick Sirianni were to come back, G.J. Kinney would be my number one choice for offensive coordinator. And can we take a look at some G.J. Kinney numbers? Again, if Nick Sirianni does come back, I think you got to fire Brian Johnson. And obviously, you have to find a new defensive coordinator, because if you bring Brian Johnson and or the defensive coordinator back in Matt Patricia or Sean Desai, next year could be a disaster. And I don't think that this Eagles team has a lot of confidence in the coaching staff. But if you get the coordinator hires right, that could be the spark plug for this team. And Sirianni has shown with quality coordinators, the team can be successful, and he's a quality head coach who does a good job of managing the game, building a good culture, and is very highly respected. G.J. Kinney is my dream OC because he's an offensive creative mind who I think brings fresh ideas to what is a stagnant Eagles offense that at times was predictable and looked like a high school offense where the concepts were not creative at all. And he's the current head coach at Texas State. Before him, 21 points per game, 325 yards per game. After him, 36 points per game, 457 yards per game. At Incarnate Word, before that, and before G.J. Kinney, 39 points per game, 513 yards per game. After him, 51 points per game, 721 yards per game. If the name sounds familiar, he was a practice squad quarterback for the Eagles for a few years. Can you bring the coaching staff back? If Jeffrey Lurie fires Howie Roseman, or if Jeffrey Lurie fires Nick Sirianni, that won't surprise me at all. But if they do bring back Nick Sirianni, need to bring in new coordinators. Ilmonic, what's good, Chase? Keep up the fire content. Thank you, my brother. DeAndre Swift was severely underused. Do you see him coming back under a better head coach? Swift was asked about coming back during Tuesday's locker room cleanout day, and he said, we'll see. He was asked about playing in Philadelphia. He said, yeah, it was a special experience. But even though he had a career year, had more than 1,000 rushing yards for the first time in his career, and he's always been so gifted. In 2022, he led all running backs in yards per touch, but this year finally broke out as far as the overall numbers go. He only had more than 20 carries twice this year. And you're right, he was severely underutilized. And I think going into 2024, Eagles have to get back to running the football and leaning on the strength of their team, even without Jason Kelce if he retires in the offensive line. And what that does is opens up the pass game too, and Jalen Hurts really struggled in the pass game the last month and a half of the season. So I'd like to see Swift come back at a very affordable price. If not, you draft the running back and you kind of reset the running back clock for your organization. Get that young back under team control for 4 years. Team Birds, if Jason Kelce does come back for one more season, does he trust Nick Sirianni? He said that he really likes Nick Sirianni. And we talked about this on Eagles Now this week. The specific quote from Jason Kelce was this: I love Nick. I think Nick's a great coach. I really do. Obviously, nobody was good enough this year. When you're that bad, it's a collective thing. I'll always have faith in Nick Sirianni. He does a lot of things structurally and organizationally that I think are really well done. Obviously, we have a lot of things to fix to improve the outcomes and the offense in general. So very complimentary of Nick Sirianni. Likes what he brings to the table as a head coach. Fletcher Cox even said, this man has been great for us, and he's a really talented head coach, but also did note Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce, offensive changes need to be made, and there were some bumps along the road. But I don't know if one bad season should cause Nick Sirianni to get canned. Dragon, what do you think about Shane Waldron as offensive coordinator? He led the Seahawks to 2 NFC Championship games and won them both. So Shane Waldron is actually a Sean McVay guy. And he came up under McVay, and we know that McVay is one of the more creative play callers and play designers in the NFL. And what stands out to me about Shane Waldron when he became the OC with the Seattle Seahawks, he maximized Geno Smith, who I don't think is a starter in this league, yet Geno Smith in 2022 is very solid. So as far as his concepts, his scheme goes, I like him, and that's why he's getting a lot of interviews with other teams across the National Football League, a name that would be a wise one for Nick Sirianni to at least interview. Mason Quilina, have we heard anything about possibly trading A.J. Brown? According to Mike Garafolo of NFL Network, A.J. Brown is not unhappy with the situation in Philadelphia. The reason why he deactivated his Twitter account and took all football and Eagles-related posts off his Instagram, he told the Eagles social media team, I'm getting off social media entirely. I want to focus on rehab and a playoff run. Obviously, the latter didn't end up happening. It would be weird for A.J. Brown to want to demand a trade. He had 1,500 yards nearly in 2 consecutive seasons for Philadelphia. He's good friends with Jalen Hurts, and he's had back-to-back career seasons. But when Lane Johnson said after that Buccaneers game, when he called out his teammates, we got to stop sulking, having bad body language, flush a bad play and get over it. I wonder if he was talking about A.J. Brown, and you have to wonder if the bad body language, the sideline outbursts negatively affect the team. Same point, he was also voted a team captain this year, and he's very well respected by his peers. Andrew Nathan, a $20 super chat. After what Fletch and others said about Sirianni, I like him returning, but he needs to be better. I think we should bring in Eric Bieniemy, pay Jesse Minter the bag for defensive coordinator, get some fresh minds in the building. He rounded out by saying Eric Bieniemy would be good for Jalen. I agree, and I think Bieniemy would be good for a couple of reasons. First, did a good job with Sam Howell and a bad Washington team. Has experience with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. That offense, despite not having good wide receiving talent, took a big drop and a big dip. I think they missed Bieniemy because Matt Nagy is not that guy. And with Brian Johnson, Jalen Hurts has known him since he was 4. Brian Johnson and Jalen Hurts are not going to get into a tiff. Brian Johnson, I don't think, is going to call out Jalen Hurts and get after him when he makes a mistake. I think Jalen Hurts might need that a little bit. He's so cool, calm, and collected, and that's good. But sometimes you need a coach to rip into you, to light a fire under your ass. And Eric Bieniemy might be able to do that. And I'm with you, Andrew. If Nick Sirianni does come back, he has to make changes. And the coordinator changes could help this football team greatly. And you know me. I've talked about Jesse Minter time and time again. I would give him $3 million to be defensive coordinator when the average salary for a coordinator is $1 million. And if he says, I want 5, shit, I think about it. How many games will the Eagles win in 2024? I still think they're a double-digit win football team. I really do. You let me know what you're thinking down in the comment section, Bird Gang. Today's Eagles Now, sponsored by Factor. You can get 50% off when you use the code EaglesChat50. You can't go wrong with Factor. Skip the overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and way more delicious than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered straight to your door. They're ready to eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. Need a special occasion meal? Gourmet Plus is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, upscale options done easily. And when things get hectic, Factor is flexible. Change your order up every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. FactorMeals.com/EaglesChat50. You pick your pre-made meals, prepped and cooked to perfection, heat them up and enjoy them, everything delivered straight to your door. Don't miss out on this limited time deal. Get 50% off. Flipping the Bird, my guy, one of our real ones on the show, and a Bird's Nest Hall of Fame member. Bring in Greg Roman as OC, Jesse Minter as defensive coordinator. Keep Nick, but hands off of the offense. See, I don't like the thought of Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, actually, because the Ravens' offense has gotten better without him. They bring in Todd Monken, who's the former Georgia offensive coordinator, and it was more of a modern scheme, and Lamar Jackson was better as a thrower. Now, I will say that Greg Roman, wherever he's gone, teams have been good running teams, but all he really runs is the RPO. NFL caught up to Colin Kaepernick when Greg Roman was the OC in San Francisco. The NFL kind of caught up to what the Ravens were doing when Greg Roman was the OC with the Baltimore Ravens. I think he just limits your pass game, and I think in today's NFL, while I want the Eagles to run the ball more, they need to be better at throwing it. Now, as a run game coordinator, I know Jeff Stoutland does some of that, but if Greg Roman is brought in that type of role, wouldn't hate it. Jesse Minter, my dream target as defensive coordinator. Can we take a look at those Jesse Minter numbers at Michigan in 2023? A young, creative defensive mind, and this Michigan scheme, which Mike McDonald is running with the Baltimore Ravens, all the talk at the NFL level right now. Jesse Minter this year, and I was at the national championship game between Michigan and Washington, had an opportunity to speak with Minter, runs a pro-style defense. They get pressure with 4. They're great on the back end. Had a lot of pro-level players that they developed along the front 4. And in that secondary, Michigan had a stop rate of 81.6%, best in the nation. They allowed just 10.4 points per game, number 1 in college football. And you want to say, oh, they played in the Big Ten. Look at what they did against Alabama. They were all over Jalen Milroe in the college football playoff semi. And then against Washington, a team that was averaging nearly 40 points per game, they held them to 13 points on 13 possessions. Michigan didn't give up 25 points all year. Number 1 total defense. Number 2 against the pass. 3 and outs and takeaways. And the second fewest 20-yard plays. With Jonathan Gannon, Sean Desai, Matt Patricia, how many explosive plays have we seen? How many times have we seen the defense just on the field for so long? Doesn't happen with Jesse Minter. Brian Thomas, if you were Jeffrey Lurie, what specifically are the first 3 moves you would make to start the 2024 season and set this team up for a playoff run? So obviously he has to decide who he wants as head coach. And let's say that Jeffrey Lurie wants to bring back Nick Sirianni and give him one more chance. That step number 1 is figuring out head coach. But what I would do is say, Nick, you got to come up with answers for why we collapsed down the stretch and lost 6 of 7 to end the year. And I want your offense in 2024 to have more modern concepts. It cannot be as vanilla, and you have to come in with fresh ideas. As part of that, you need to bring in a new offensive coordinator who has not been within this organization, because they need to give you fresh ideas, and you need to hear out and be willing to listen to fresh ideas with your offense, and you need to make a change at defensive coordinator. So those are some changes. If I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm pitching. Now, what's of note here is that he was going to bring back Doug Peterson for 2021. Peterson then gave Jeffrey Lurie the hires that he was going to make at OC and DC, and Lurie fired him because he didn't like the choices. So he could do the same with Nick Sirianni. It has happened before, and the Eagles have moved off of Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, very, very quickly. So those are the steps that I'm kind of taking, Brian. And he doesn't really have a say in roster management. That's Howie's expertise. But a couple of needs for this team. If I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm telling Howie Roseman, you need to invest in linebacker. We got annihilated there. We need to get rid of James Bradbury and figure out to move off that contract. We need to get better at safety. And with this new defensive scheme, how can we maximize the players up front, which they underachieved all year? S-Max, how about looking into Zach Ertz? Jack Stoll is going to be a restricted free agent. You could look to bring in Ertz as your backup tight end. The only thing with Stoll, the Eagles utilize him as a blocker and really a blocker only. That can actually hurt them sometimes because it makes their offense very, very predictable, because when Stoll's in, you know he's not going out for a catch, right? With Zach Ertz, if you want him to be your backup and you want to use Dallas Goedert as that blocking tight end, which he's always really, really good at, you can have Goddard as your pass blocking and receiving tight end, and Zach Ertz as your backup pass catching tight end. Really surprised that Ertz didn't latch on with the playoff team. X ranks. Do we bring back Frank Reich as offensive coordinator since he also has some experience with Hurts? Here's my issue with Frank Reich. His offense with Indy, his offense with Carolina really struggled. And he's not really known as a creative offensive mind. I think Nick Sirianni needs to look at a G.J. Kinney. He needs to look at the Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur type of tree. They need a creative offensive play caller and play designer in here because that offense was so predictable, so high school-ish, so vanilla, that they were just lame all year. So I don't know if Frank Reich brings you any new ideas. Now, would I hire Frank Reich as quarterback's coach? If he's down to do that, I would do that. If you enjoyed today's show, give me a real one down below. It's our Real One roll call. Thanks for always watching, and don't forget to subscribe for daily shows on the Birds.